Welcome to the RAKK Factor Podcast. I'm Zach Haas of Creek Bottom Land Management. Alongside me is Tim Cambel and Tom Lester of RAKK Fuel. Today, though, we're going to be highlighting Tim in the middle here and a very unique business that he owns and operates based out of Alaska. Well, based out of Eau Claire, but working in Alaska.
Yep. Based around Alaska.
Yeah. Named Alaska Trophy Express. So we'll kind of dive in. And I guess first off, our question mainly is, how did a guy from down here get involved up there?
Okay, so I get that question all the time. Customers of mine, they're always asking me, how did this start? For me, I've hunted in Alaska before. And I tell a lot of my hunters this, hunting in Alaska can be a logistical nightmare. From not even just getting your animal home, but there's a lot of flights and a lot of planes and a lot of small planes that you have to get on to get to these remote parts of Alaska. What I'm trying to do is make it easier for hunters to be able to bring their big game animals home and down into the lower 48. So how it started was we hunted up there. We had some really good success. Well, how are we getting all these animals home? And at the time, it was all airlines. You had to get it on airlines. Airlines are expensive. We've all dealt with airlines before. I've heard people's nightmares of losing luggage, losing meat, losing their animals on tarmacs. If it doesn't reach the plane, they don't have a freezer facility for you. So me and a couple buddies had the brainchild of, what if we do it ourselves? Let's figure out a better way. And so what we do is we have certain cold storage facilities throughout Alaska that we contract through. And we run 53-foot semis from Alaska down to the lower 48 and get your animals dropped off to you in the lower 48. So making it very affordable and just a good way, because people donate a lot of meat up there, which is great. It helps a lot of the villages. But one reason why they donate a lot of meat is because it's so difficult to get home. Because if you've ever killed a moose up there, they're big animals. You're bringing home 500-600 pounds of meat pretty easily.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to fly with that. So I make it kind of an affordable way to bring it down. But that's kind of how it started. Is we ran into that wall of, how do we get this out of here? And so we kind of sat down, thought about it, and that's how it started.
So how long have you been doing this?
So I had been doing it with a couple buddies for 4 years, and then I took it over fully myself January of last year.
Okay.
So I've been doing it by myself now. This is my second year by myself.
Okay.
So
do you work with outfitters?
Yeah, I do. I work with a lot of individuals, but I also work with a lot of outfitters, and not just outfitters, but flying services too, because there's up in Alaska, when it comes to caribou and moose hunting, you can still do that stuff on a DIY basis. You don't need an outfitter. You don't need a guide. So a lot of guys will just use a flying service. Hey, fly me into this area and drop me off. Come pick me up in 10 or 14 days or whatever it is. Right. So I work with a lot of outfitters, a lot of flying services, but then I get a lot of calls from just individuals as well. But my main business comes from networking with the outfitters up there and talking to them. Some of these outfitters run 5 guys a year. Some of them run 10 to 15 guys a year. So that's kind of where my main networking comes from. I reach out to them. They kind of let their customers know, hey, this is how you get it home. This is a great way to get it home. And then a lot of times their customers call me and I answer all the questions.
So how does an individual just find out about this and get a hold of you?
A lot of people are doing Google searches, things like that. Like, how do I get my meat home from Alaska? If you Google that, my company is going to come up, AlaskaTrophyExpress.com. But again, it comes down to a lot of word of mouth.
Right.
A lot of guys have hunted up there before, repeat clients, or their friends are going and they tell me about it. I don't do a ton of advertising. Just the way it sits, it's already pretty busy as it is. Right. So I don't do a ton of advertising. I do a little bit. I send some postcards out to some special tag holders that I can get contact information for. I send some postcards out, a little bit of literature that way, but a lot of it comes from the outfitters that I've used in the past, them just telling their clients, hey, get a hold of this guy. he'll answer anything you have. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's pretty neat.
yeah. So, but a lot of word of mouth.
So
A lot of word of mouth.
you're getting ready to fly up there.
Yeah. So I leave on October 5th. Fly
Okay.
up there.
So once you fly out there, do you go all around Alaska picking stuff up?
Yep. So like I said, I have freezer facilities in 3 cities in Alaska. I have Fairbanks, which is the northern part of Alaska. Well, if you look at a map, Fairbanks isn't that far north, but as far as major cities go, so we have Fairbanks, and then on the east side, I have Tok, Alaska, and then I have Anchorage. Anchorage is by far my biggest. But so what we do is we fly in. I fly in there with a pretty good sized group of people. I send some guys up to Fairbanks to get that trailer situated. We send some guys to Tok to get things situated there. Everything ends up in Anchorage.
Okay.
I have a facility that we sort in. So we get everything pulled out of basically negative 10 degree freezers, Connexes, get it onto refrigerated semis. We pull it out, we get it sorted. I have 3 different routes for the lower 48. So that's 3 different semis. So everything gets sorted for which semi it's going on here. And then they get put back in. And once those doors, I go through a federal fish and game inspection every year. So they come in, they inspect everything, make sure, everything's legal, everything like that. They do all the paperwork for the border, things of that nature. I'm anticipating that to happen on October 9th this year, and my trucks to leave Anchorage on October 10th. So
you have 3 trucks leaving October 10th.
Yep. Down through Canada and then into the U.S. border.
So about how many customers are you dealing with in a year?
Last year I did 237 animals in total. So quite a few. Those trucks were pretty loaded. This year, as it sits, I'm going up there in a few days. As it sits, we're over 200 again this year, with phone calls still coming in every day.
Okay.
So I'm guessing we'll be right in that same ballpark that we
now,
were last year.
Is there another time? Is this the only time?
I do one route a year.
Okay.
I really base everything off of the moose season. There's
Okay.
a lot of moose hunters go up there. I capture the caribou season as well.
Okay.
Because caribou up there usually starts like the first weekend in August in some areas. And then moose season starts usually September, like either the September 1st or September 5th. So there are a few moose seasons on the outside of September, some of their muzzleloader hunts, things like that. But I'm kind of there for the bulk of it.
Right.
Do my one pickup, and then just 3 routes one time a year.
And now, like for anyone, like, let's say researching, is there any like particular season animal that they won't be able to use a surface?
Yeah, there are actually. So I can't haul wolves, black bears, or grizzly bears. And technically I can haul them, but since they're on the endangered species list and they're attached to what's called the CITES regulation. So they're basically on a list. They need a lot more forms and paperwork and things like that to be done to be able to haul them back. And I hate to say it, but frankly, I just don't have the time to. You're dealing with the government. It can take weeks to get those forms back. I wish I could, because I get a lot of calls from bear hunters or a lot of guys that were moose hunting and bear hunting.
Yep.
But if you have questions on how to get it out, if you do kill a grizzly or a wolf and you want to get it home, because everybody does, give me a call. I can still help you. I have plenty of connections up there. I can point you in the right direction.
Okay.
But as far as animals that I can haul, as far as the big game go, I can haul moose, caribou. I can do sheep. I can do goats. And actually last year, it was the first one we've ever done. We did a bison.
Really?
So there was Alaska has a herd of bison. Yep. The tag is extremely hard to get. And one of my customers got it, called me, and we hauled it back for him.
Awesome.
So
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. It was definitely something different that you don't see every day coming out of Alaska.
So, and really, so like your clients, you go up there, let's say most of these people, it's once in a lifetime opportunities,
Yep.
So they shoot a moose, you get a tag, the outfitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the end of their work or worry, because you kind of take everything from there on, right?
Yep. Once everything gets to one of my storage facilities, either at Anchorage, Tok, or in Fairbanks, once it's there, they don't have to worry about it until they come home. the service that we do, it's not what I would call like a doorstep service. I'm not Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm running
Better be here in 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. I'm running 53-foot reefer trailers, refrigerated semi trailers. So it's really hard to get into residential areas.
Right.
So what I do is in the lower 48, we touch quite a few states. We don't touch them all, but we have pickup points. And what happens is those customers, I'll notify you, hey, truck's going to be there so-and-so date at so-and-so time. Meet my driver there. My driver helps you get it unloaded from the truck into the back of your truck or vehicle, whatever it is, and away you go. So some people do drive an hour, 2 hours, something like that to meet my truck. I have some guys, I mean, I try to cover Texas as best I can, but we all know how big Texas is. I have a couple guys that have driven 6 hours before to come pick it up.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's worth it to them because now they can bring their entire animal home.
Right.
Instead of I'm going to bring 100 pounds home and that's it.
Right.
So
when you're loading it, you've got to make sure that you load so that your first stops are on the back of the thing. So you're not
first
digging
in, last
through.
out. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So everything is, all the trucks are coordinated by stop.
Okay.
So as we load it, I have a truck that its last stop is in Wisconsin. So we get it loaded, all the Wisconsin stops are up front, and then kind of work back from there. So yeah, definitely that first in, last out. So we're not climbing over trailers because I mean, I can show you guys some pictures of what those trailers look like, but it's not fun climbing over all those moose antlers and stuff.
No.
So
but
we make it work.
When you have like a stop and you've got your customer coming to meet you and you're going to take his stuff out to get it to him, is that like a stop where multiple people?
Yeah. So what I do is everything on my website. So I go through I call it a pre-registration. Okay. Go on my website, get signed up. It guarantees you a spot on the truck. As long as you're registered, you will have a spot on the truck. If you don't register, there's a chance that you might not have a spot on the truck because I do get full at some point.
Right.
And I eventually have to stop taking people. But on there, you can select a stop. So you select your stop. Those are your guaranteed stops. So I'm stopping there, whether there's 100 that I'm dropping off or 1,500.
Oh, gotcha.
So I think the most hunters in one location that I got last year was like 12.
Okay.
I had 12 guys all come to one
Which
spot.
is probably kind of cool for all those
Yeah,
guys.
it is.
Right.
And then then they all kind of get together, they talk about their hunt, and before you know it, they're spending an hour there talking.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, looks like I have the biggest moose.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. Right. Comparing animals. So it's really unique. It's a lot different than I tell a lot of people that I have a pretty niche business, and they kind of laugh at me like, oh yeah, sure you do. And then I explain it and they're, oh yeah, you really do.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's pretty different. But it's been great. I get a lot of compliments and a lot of happy hunters, just like, hey, thanks for providing the service. We would have never gotten this entire thing home.
Well, and honestly, like, even in the States, that's why most of my hunts I drive to because I'm just so scared of the worry of my animals,
Right.
You know?
Exactly. So we take all that worry out. Like I said, once it gets to one of my cold storage facilities that we contract through, it's there until I physically come and pick it up.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to go through anything else.
Nice.
So
what's, I guess, like the average cost?
yeah. So obviously you have a moose, you have a caribou, two completely different sizes. I don't do anything off weight. I do everything by flat rate. So if you have a full moose, which is what I consider all the meat, so bring all the hindquarters, as much meat as you can bring. So all the meat, the cape, and the antlers, it's $950.
Oh,
Geez.
Yeah. And then for a caribou, same thing, full animal. All the meat, cape, and antlers is $575.
Okay.
So
when you're doing this, hopefully you were like, and you got to give me one steak. You get like 200 steaks out of that deal.
That would
be pretty
cool
sweet.
because there are still a lot of people that donate up there.
Okay.
So we talk to some of these guys that are like, I just don't need all this meat. So if they're going to donate some, well, I tell you what, I'll haul it for half price if you leave a quarter on the truck for me or something like that. So I have worked things out like that before. So it's I'm fortunate in that regard.
Nice.
Tom's gonna be on your trailer.
He's gonna be at that stop waiting. Any extra?
I can use a quarter.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it's pretty unique. It's definitely different. It's it's a lot of work, especially when you're in Alaska. You have like I said last year, 237 animals that you have to get through. Most of those animals have 4 quarters plus other bags that you're looking through. And that's the other thing too. I take meat pretty much any way you can get it to me. So it does not have to be processed. It can be left on the bone in a game bag. That's fine, which is a big draw for a lot of people too, because they like to process their own meat. Right. They don't have time to get it to a processor. Processors can be fairly expensive. If you want to get it processed, great. That's fantastic. It's going to come back to me in a box.
Right.
If you don't have time for it or don't want it, I would say probably 75% of what I haul is full animals still on quarters, still on the bone, and just in game bags.
It's like when you bring them back, it's like weapons. You need a licensed FFA dealer, for instance. You have to do the same thing with the meat and all that. So you have to bring it to like a certified butcher shop or something that way.
If you're going to get it processed, you mean, or just when
you bring it back?
Yeah. So since I go through a federal fish and game inspection, so the federal fish and game comes to our facility. They look over all the antlers. They look over everything. Then they basically sign off on it. So then I have documentation. So when we go through Canada, because that's the biggest hurdle, is you're going from the U.S. through Canada back into the U.S. So my trailers get sealed in Alaska, can't be broken until I reach the border and in the lower 48. So all the paperwork is federally signed, everything like that. So when we get to the border, that's what we show the Canadians, and they sign off on it, and we're good to go.
So now, do they open it once you get to the?
They have before.
Okay.
They can open it, but then they reissue a seal.
Okay.
So they put a new seal on the truck. So they have opened it before. It's very rare, especially now. Most people know we're coming through, and we've worked with a lot of the same people on the fish and game side of it, and they have connections on the Canadian side of it. So it ends up working out pretty well. We know there's some states that I stay out of in the lower 48.
Oh, okay.
Just because they do give us a hard time. Not that we're not doing anything illegal, but we're, some states, I don't want to say frown upon it, but I stay out of California. They're just kind of
what we all do.
Right. They're just kind of a thorn in my side, and it's unfortunate because I have a lot of good customers that are in California.
Sure. Oh, I believe it.
But they just have to drive a little bit farther. So I stay out of California. Interestingly enough, I actually stay out of Wyoming too. They kind of have given us a hard time in the past. Even though everything, like I said, even though we go through a federal fish and game inspection, they just kind of give us a hard time.
Which is surprising, being a Western destination state.
Right. Exactly. But all it takes is 1 or 2 times that we get questioned, and like I said, we're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
It's just if you guys are going to be more of a hassle, so now we just go through Montana instead.
Okay.
So we kind of go up and down through.
Now, I guess throwing on the flip side, have you ever had an animal taken off a truck because something didn't line up?
I've had some animals taken when I've done the fish and game inspection in Alaska. Usually, so when we do the federal fish and game inspection, they're looking at a few different things. Most of Alaska, to kill a bull in most of the units, is going to be, it's either got to be 50 inches wide or it's got to have 4 brow tines on the front. Okay. So if it's under 50 inches and doesn't have the 4 brow tines, automatically that one's going to get questioned. So they're going to come in, they're going to see, okay, this is a 47-inch bull. Yeah. We're going to call, make sure, because there are some any bull units that you can kill them in. So they just need to call, verify that they're in an any bull unit. Once they are, great. But we had somebody last year that was not in a any bull unit and had one too small, and it got taken. Unfortunately, and
they take everything, horns, meat, everything,
the whole thing. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and it's one of those things too where you can see, the guys that are doing the inspections, like they're truly bummed out because maybe it's 46 inches,
right,
and it has 3 brow tines instead of 4, or it might even be 3 brow tines is legal, but whatever it is, they're like, stretching their tape measure, like, how can we make this 50 to make it legal? But at the end of the day, if it's not, they're not going to be jerks about it. They're all really good people that I've dealt with. They have to do their job too.
Right. So now, if you do something like that, I mean, is that a fine too? I mean,
for the most, I mean, if you shoot one that's like grossly illegal, you're probably going to be fine. But
so if you're shooting a 40, you're probably
you're
in trouble.
Risk. Yeah, but if you shoot
to
like
46, 47.
if you shoot a 48-inch bull that's just under 50, they're going to be very lenient on you. A lot of times, all they're going to do, they're just going to take it. They're going to ask you some questions. You might have to pay a small fine, something like that. But
yeah, at least not throwing the book at you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, you were in the wrong, but these guys are pretty understanding of what's happening.
So you haven't had anything though, like you take it from there, you get across through Canada and over here. And that's good.
And that's part of the reason why I prefer to have the federal fish and game inspection. I'd rather them be there, make sure everything's taken care of, make sure that they get it signed off on, because if I do get pulled over or something like that, and just, hey, look, this is all, I mean, it's sealed. I mean, it's a federally, I mean, it's stamped, everything.
Right.
It's a federal document. You can show them that and be like, hey, we've gone through all the right channels, and most of the time that's going to be good. So, but we've never had, and I say that, knock on wood, never had like the trailer completely torn apart or anything like that. So we've had some holdups at the border, just kind of some people that maybe didn't know exactly what was going on, and either they want to open up the back of the trailer and they see that, they're like, holy cow, what is happening here? So we have been questioned before, but we've never been like torn apart or anything. Okay. So
just openly, I'm just carrying animals across the border.
Yeah, exactly. So
now you said all these go to three destinations with a freezer in them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just because I'm always a paranoid person, have you ever seen where one of those freezers took a crap?
Nope.
That's awesome.
So the one that I work with in Anchorage, Dalton Refrigeration, they service reefer trailers, they service industrial refrigeration units.
Okay.
And then they have basically 5 40-foot connexes.
Okay.
Basically 40-foot containers with freezers in them, or freezer units on them. So if anything does go bad, like, hey, my guy in Tok just shut down, I just send one of those guys up there to fix it. So that's really lucky, because if something happens, they're the guys that anybody would call anyway. So they can fix anything that they need.
All right. So let's say something happened and you got to call them. How far of a drive are we talking about from Anchorage to Tok or to Fairbanks?
So to Fairbanks, they're probably getting on a plane.
Okay.
I mean, it's a 6-hour drive.
Okay.
But there's so many small planes that go up to Fairbanks every day. They'll just hop on a plane and go. They'll be there.
Okay.
From Fairbanks to Tok is about, I believe it's about 5 hours. From Tok to Anchorage is about 5.5 to 6.
Okay.
So they can get there. And the nice thing is all of our freezers are set to negative 10 degrees and have been running at negative 10 degrees for a while.
So if something happens,
keep the door shut, be there in a few hours. It's not going to affect anything. Right. So, yeah, I mean, we've never had any of those issues. We've had some issues with meat that's come in, that, not necessarily the hunter, but some of these other flying services kind of didn't do it right. We've had some meat come in that wasn't the best looking stuff, but at the end of the day, we were able to salvage the majority of it. So
okay,
yeah.
Now, obviously, you're coming from Alaska. Have you, I should say, ever gone like through Canada and picked up outfitters stuff through Canada?
So I haven't.
Okay.
That's something kind of on my potential to-do list. It's just a little bit different because now you're dealing with a foreign country. And the reason I don't do it on the way down from Alaska through and pick up in Canada is because my trailers are sealed and I don't want to break those seals and run the risk of something happening if a seal's broken.
So that'd be like a dedicated just Canada trip.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And the infrastructure in Canada, one, it's a lot more spread out, and it's not as, I don't want to say it, not as advanced as like what an Alaska is going to be. There are some good hunting villages out of Canada, like Whitehorse in the Yukon. It's a great place. A lot of people go there. A lot of moose come out of there. Infrastructure wise, it's just a lot more difficult. So, but it's something that I'd like to work on in the future.
Yeah, because I could see that like being a big perk for those outfitters too.
Yeah, for sure. Because I get calls every year from guys that are coming down from Canada.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can you do this? So
Okay.
yeah, it's definitely something that I'd like to. It's just a lot more logistics going into it, and a lot of different things, but a little bit of work figured out.
So are you turning down enough clients where you're thinking about increasing up to like a fourth?
Yeah, there's definitely every year there's definitely a possibility that we're gonna end up going to a fourth truck. It's kind of a fine line you have to play because you have to get that truck a certain amount of animals. It doesn't necessarily have to be full, but there's got to be a certain amount of animals in it. So if you do bring on that fourth truck, it's like, all right, hopefully there's enough to fit. Because if you say, okay, I'm bringing on the fourth truck and you can only put one animal in there, it's like, oh, what did I do?
Right.
So there is kind of that fine line, but hopefully eventually we get there.
Okay.
Hopefully. I know I have room in the lower 48 for another truck for sure on some of these routes.
So now is it the same group of guys that are always driving, or do you?
For the most part, I contract my trucks with a guy that's been doing it for a long time. He's one of the main drivers, and then I always put him in charge of finding a few other people.
Okay.
It's been a lot of the same people the last few years. This year we have 2 new drivers this year. Well, I shouldn't say that. We have one that's done it a couple years ago, and one guy, it'll be his first year, but he sounds like he's a big hunter, and he wanted to do it because it's not your average truck driving job where you pull up to a dock.
You're gonna see some
getting
sweet
loaded. Stuff. You're pulling up. We usually pick major truck stops. You're helping people unload, hand unloading things. So it's a little out of the ordinary when it comes to like an everyday driver type situation. But the guys, like I said, the guy that I've been working with for a while is very good at it, and it's definitely an asset to the team.
So now on these trucks, you got 2 guys in each truck so that they can rotate?
Just one.
Okay.
So we have to count that in to when we're going on our stops, because they have to take their mandatory breaks.
Yep.
So we have to count that in to when we're doing it. But yeah, they just run one driver the entire time. So.
And I guess from the time like you leave Alaska, on average, when is that last animal?
Sure. So if my trucks, this is how I have it kind of worked out in my head. And sometimes it works that way and sometimes it doesn't work out. But my last day in Alaska is going to be October 10th. It takes roughly 2 days to get all the way through Canada. I actually do a quick cross dock onto my lower 48 trucks in Washington. And then from Washington, we start the routes from there. My north truck will be done in about 3, maybe 4 days. So pretty quick. My central route, which is my route that goes farthest east, goes all the way out to DuBois, Pennsylvania. I'm anticipating that one being done probably the 22nd or so of October. Okay. I would say right in there. And then my southern truck, which ends in Chattanooga, I'm guessing that one's going to be done right around that October 19th.
So you're getting your animal pretty.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing. Some of the caribou hunters, if you're up there in August, I'm getting a little antsy for it. But for the most part, as long as you don't mind waiting a little while to get your animal back, it's a really easy way to get your animal to you.
Yeah, to me it's a no-brainer because you're confident your animal's getting to you.
Exactly.
Not like an airline where you're like,
is it on the plane? Yeah. What? And that's another thing too. Is some airlines are going to make you split the antlers, so they're going to have to be skull capped. You're going to have to split them in half and fold them together to get them on that plane, which, as far as taxidermy goes, makes it a little bit more difficult. And then some guys who are, if it's a big bull, you can't score it in the Boone and Crockett book.
Right.
So that's one of my benefits. You don't have to split the antlers. I can bring back full Euros. Nice. I can bring back pretty much anything. So
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. And those moose quarters that were thrown around, they're as tall as I am. They're huge. You're picking up. It's incredible the size of these animals. It really is.
I think the next time we do one of these podcasts, we're gonna have to have some moose steaks.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some sausage out here or something. Some moose steaks. Be ideal. So. Yeah.
No, honestly, for me, because I've always been looking at it. Like I looked at DIY, Caribou, and Moose and all that, but I was always like, God, you have these logistics of the flights and flying stuff back, and I was like, that alone kind of was like, that's a big deterrent.
Yeah.
When I could just go out west quick and drive it back, or
try to shoot an elk or whatever it may be.
Right. Yeah, because I didn't know something like that existed there.
No,
Yeah.
neither did I. That's why when I heard about it, I'm like, we got to talk to Tim.
Oh
about
yeah.
this. You know, and I'm thinking you could easily charge a couple grand on a moose. You know, and under $1,000, that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah. And I try to, at the end of the day, I'm a hunter myself, obviously.
Right.
I'm trying to bring it back at a reasonable cost for hunters to try to encourage them to bring the entire thing back, because it is some of the best meat in the world.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
obviously there is value to donating to some of the villages, but if you can bring some of it back and utilize it, I mean, like you said, a lot of these are once in a lifetime type hunts.
Oh yeah. You want to try it? You want to eat it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I mean that all worked out great.
Yeah.
But
and that's the other question I get too, as far as logistics, things like that. I get that question all the time, right?
Yeah.
Who should I talk to? What outfitters are out there? I have such a deep connection with a lot of these outfitters and flying services, and I see where a lot of the big bulls are coming from, things like that. If anybody has any questions, seriously, just reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk.
Right.
yeah,
So,
that's cool.
That's
anyway.
easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy. I talked through last year. I basically talked through one whole group's entire caribou hunt for them. Like, okay, you got to make sure you do this. Make sure you do this. You know, make sure you do this, because I've just built the knowledge over the years of working and working with a lot of these guys to be able to help them.
Right.
And that's at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to do, is help people be successful and get their animal back.
Right. Nice.
No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, it gives me a lot to think about. I mean, I mean, it's cool. It's obviously something I never thought about, never thought was an option.
Yeah.
You know, for everyone listening and obviously watching, I mean, that's pretty cool. So I guess with that said, what's the best way for anyone that's doing these lifetime hunts
Sure.
to get in touch with you to set this up?
So I have a Facebook page. I'm not as active on it as I should be. Visit my website, which is alaskatrophyexpress.com. There's my contact information for my cell phone, for my email address, alaskatrophyexpress@gmail.com. Pretty easy. But those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And I take calls every year. Like we're in 2023. I get calls. Hey, I'm going 2025 or 2024, whatever it may be. So, I mean, if you're going to Alaska, start planning, because it's not a trip that you can just hop in the truck and go. It takes, like I said, it can be a logistical nightmare. There's a lot of planning you need to do, so get that done ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So
awesome. Well, thank you much, Tim. It was a pleasure.
It.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tim.